This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me, I bet you wish you was me, I know it, I know.
What is poppin', everybody? And welcome back to another special episode of the Only Friends podcast. But you know, I'm here with my only friends. And you know that includes my boy, Tortue!
No. Tortoise in the main. It's the tortoise
What
in the
is
main.
poppin', squad?
Go insane. The tortoise bring the pain. It's the tortoise in the main. It's the tortoise in the main. Make them go insane. The tortoise bringing the pain.
Shout out to our boy Robert. He's at the he's one of the attendees of the academy, and he hooked us up with these little buttons that got great things on them.
What the fuck is happening?
I'm just saying, he made our job easier, and so now we don't have to do anything. We just click these buttons. We don't have to talk.
Young and bussin'. Tortoises are creatures of habit.
Oh, amazing! Just made our job so much easier.
These things are fucking great.
Listen, man, we've been working all day. I'm tired. I don't want to talk. I want to press button.
We pre-recorded everything we're gonna say.
I've been talking all day, man. My fucking voice hurts. I need words I can save, you know?
I'm a little concerned for your space on this podcast, both of you. that you could be reduced down to an easy button.
Didn't you see the flavor that I brought behind it, though?
Yeah,
What,
me
the
too.
finger wag?
Not just everybody could do a finger wag as me, you know?
I don't know, man.
I was getting down.
You got to bring the hype to the pod, you know?
Let's get down.
It was nice to hear Landon's voice again. I forgot
I
what it sounded like.
I do have Landon's here.
Hey, Melissa.
Hey.
What's up?
I know.
Melissa's saving money on an Uber ride.
She is. She's like, I'm like, hey, are you gonna be on the pod? She's like, no, I'm going home. And she's like, I don't want to pay for an Uber. I guess I'll
I
be on
didn't
the
want to pay for an Uber, so here I am.
There you are.
No, what really happened was the rumor was this whole podcast had turned into an echo chamber, and we're gonna have a heated debate today. So we brought Melissa in to be the antagonist,
right?
That Vertucci believes you to be.
Apparently, you
You're the
know,
one who will stand up
I
to me.
can't hate her. I tried so hard to hate her, but she just speaks her mind, and her Charlie Carroll is so funny.
Fucking ankle biter, just like Andre.
You talking about the
Let us
Malaysian?
cook. Real. Now I'm bad. Mid.
All right, that's probably
Best
enough
here.
of them. Can we get this guy who gave them the buttons?
One of
and
them's
get
got
him
to
out?
count. Get him out.
Everybody loves a chop pot.
That might be my least favorite thing that's made it to recording. Oh man! All right, so we don't have much to talk about today. Just cheating as usual.
Yeah, always.
Because why wouldn't there be? No. I think that this is actually a pretty interesting story, the way that it all played out. God bless Twitter Spaces, man. This podcast would have been very different had that space not taken place yesterday. So
We all thought he cheated.
yeah, big time. I was ready to just come on here and just be like, whoever didn't DQ this guy is a coward.
Fill me in. I didn't listen.
Okay, so I think we have a little bit of it. Let's roll the video if you got it, Guap.
Sure.
Let's start with that.
If you got it, didn't you send it to him?
I sent it to him, but we got it's a long thread.
That's true.
What are you talking about? You're using GTO Wizard. I see you through your reflective sunglasses. You're using Wizard the whole time. That's one hand. Right. Both of you. You're using GTO Wizard the whole time, bro. What's your plan? So why is it unreasonable for me to using your right to ask you to stop using it respectfully? And you make a big deal out of me. You're acting like I'm the one who's tripping.
You're tripping.
You're tripping.
We gotta talk this level. You're tripping.
I see through sunglasses. Every hand he's using it.
If you have an issue, you can call a call.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so what happened?
All right, two quick observations. Number one, the guy with the white hair isn't doing shit about shit.
No, everybody just keep it down, all right?
He's just there to make sure that the yelling stops.
Yes, please don't beat each other up.
Yeah, he has no interest. He doesn't know what the rules are. Like, he might be a
Just knows,
janitor.
like, do I call security or
Right.
not?
Is anybody coming here?
How bad is this about to get? And then number two, I don't think it really strengthens Peter's case to say, like, how is this not my business? I'm on your right. As if like, he had position on him and be like, you look at whatever you want
Yeah.
there,
I think he
big
was
guy.
a little. I would like to see what happened before that.
I
think it was just a little heated.
All I could think about was that meme where it says, if you think you're dumb, Kim Kardashian once wore mirrored sunglasses to a poker
So
table.
is that like a? Should I not wear mirrored sunglasses?
It ain't great.
Can you
So-
really see someone's cards?
Sometimes.
Man, I ran. It'd be really hard.
I ran one of the best trolls I've ever run on somebody probably 10 years ago in Florida. There was this regular there. I can't remember her name, but she had signed with Blue Optics, Jonathan Little's sunglasses company, and very proud. She's a Blue Optics pro, and she comes on and she has these fucking mirrored glasses on, and they're just like really, really reflective. So this pot happens where I 3-bet and maybe she cold 4s or something like that. I think I had like ace queen or whatever. Anyway, the way the board texture ran out, it was just abundantly clear that she very often had like ace king or aces with the ace of spades. Just like she ended up betting on like a 3-spade board with an ace out there or something along those lines. And as she was like sliding her hand in the muck to collect her pot, I just look at her. I go, listen, I don't want to alarm you, but I could see the ace of spades in your glasses. And she just perks right up like, are you serious? And I go, yeah, I think you should probably consider taking them off. And she like turns over the ace of spades.
We'll wear them a lot.
I couldn't see shit, Melissa.
You have to really be like. It's gonna be obvious if you're like looking and trying to see, like, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like,
Seems like fine.
I was trying to see if I could see cards in her glasses, and
Yeah.
like, I'm sure if she like really
These ones
got
are-
down there
these
close
ones are
enough.
fine. These are fine.
Yeah, these
We'll
are.
wear those.
So these are reflective.
What I
Not
realized,
enough.
No, those
Not
are
enough.
see through.
what I
Like
realized in the
mirror.
video is,
There you go.
Wow.
Andrew immediately said one time, he was like, I did it one time. He's like, you've been doing it the whole time. He's like, yeah, so what?
Well-
or he's like, and so what?
Okay, so we got a lot of clarity on all this. For what it's worth, when I saw the video yesterday, I was just like, this guy's a fucking
When I
cheater.
take these off, what's your read on me?
You're
Like,
bussing. For real.
No, but like, am I like, how'd you play against me like this?
I mean, I'm very confident you're a sugar baby.
Shit. Wait, that could be good.
No, that's a good thing.
Okay.
Like, no way you have any, no way you have any idea what's going on pre-flop
Right. Maybe
or
I'll get like a
post.
fake ring,
Okay. Yeah.
big diamond.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're probably gonna have to get better at flirting. You're a little bit cold. But if you
Well,
really
you know
wanna,
you gotta be.
if you
You
wanna
give
pull
these
it
guys
off.
an inch, they'll take a mile. Really.
you just gotta be out
You
there.
gotta be.
Yeah. No. I think it's a good look.
Okay.
Much better
I'll
than the
consider it.
tortoise can pull off. No offense, man, but
Are you kidding me?
the wraparound Gucci's or Versace's aren't
Because
you,
I've
man.
never played
Wow,
with
you-
sunglasses before, but I think I'm gonna try it.
He wouldn't have fucking passed your test, bro.
No.
I made the question. I literally made the question. I will say I put both Gucci and Versace because I wasn't positive.
Yeah.
I figured you guys would sort it out.
I'm
but
definitely wearing those during the tag team event. I guarantee you that right
Well,
Who are
yeah.
you playing tag team with?
I am playing the tag team with what was his name?
one of the,
John.
One
Yeah.
of the-
John from Dallas.
Wow, the funny part is, like, you're just right 15%
I just
of
know
the
him
time.
as Tech Tortilla on Twitter.
Yeah, you're just right
yeah.
15% of the time.
Yep.
John, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Yep, I
right,
like
Yeah,
exactly.
So Lamanna was the first tag team seat that we gave away to a proud member of the YouTube channel.
He's a huge Dallas
Okay.
Stars fan. How's he doing right now?
Unlucky. Very unlucky.
Down bad.
It's okay.
So we have like 5 more weeks of giveaway. I think we'll do Matt Hunt this week. Seems appropriate.
So they're all tag team seats.
Yeah.
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 Maybe
we
you
gave
should
away
give
one seat
away
too.
one for me.
Well, if you would like, we're happy to auction you off.
But I'm a little scared.
I mean,
That could
yeah.
be fun.
You have
Yeah.
to be on the pod for a week straight, though.
Comes with a free roll.
Yeah.
You're making like $520.
500 for a week. A little low.
20.
A little low. A little low.
Are you saying that her ROI that is 2%?
Well, yeah. not 2, right? Yeah, 2.
Yeah, too.
Yeah, 2. I don't know.
Oh no, 4.
It's a tag team. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
4.
yeah.
Hey, last year
It's half.
Espin and Pats won a tough field.
Tough field.
field.
Tough field. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Corey and Jamie, second place.
I-
Tough field.
Shout out
I
to
can't
the
believe I'm gonna have to play
silver
this thing.
medalists.
Oh,
I-
you're gonna auction yourself off.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's trying
everybody.
to
Okay,
do,
that's cool.
He's trying to do
Even
himself
Guapo's
last.
involved.
That's right.
Oh.
He's trying to do himself last for
I'll tell you
like,
what, Guapo is there with his notebook this morning taking notes. He is going to be ready for the tag team. So
Indeed.
when it's
This
his
is true.
turn, Get ready.
Yeah, you
Better know
definitely
your
want to
questions.
win.
You better know some Guapo
You
questions.
definitely want to win Landon, Guapo, Hunt, Melissa, Lamanna. They're all trying
Are you
really
saying you're
hard.
not fun?
I'm saying if you want to play 80 to 90% of the event, I'm your guy.
Whoa.
I'm your guy for sure.
I might be their friend for that one as well. 75.
Well, he's
Okay.
going to be at like 6 different casinos that day. So it's,
Right.
you know.
Conrad's a different beast. I'm going to be, I'll be the worst in the sense that I'll let you do all the work. And then when we get down to the final two tables, you got to go.
Get a
But you said you don't believe in ICM.
My time to shine. That's right. We're playing to win, baby.
I was thinking, do we have enough weeks to give away everybody? We have to do a couple in one.
Oh, we
one
might have
week.
to do 2 in
just,
1 week.
Just because we want to give people enough time to make travel arrangements.
That's
and
what I
that
was
kind
saying.
of stuff.
Berkey's like trying to do him last, so he doesn't have to give himself away, so he doesn't have to have a
When is
part.
it, the
He doesn't do
21st?
it.
22nd.
Yeah, so we still have 5 weeks. We'll just do 2 in 1.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 and 2.
2-2. Yeah.
It depends if we give Melissa away or not.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll just auction you off to the highest bidder.
I would auction off a date with myself.
Wow.
It's a
It wasn't
tag
even
team
a
event. It's
date,
not
it
a
was
But the
date.
tag team
proceeds would
event.
go
My
to
God.
me,
Yeah.
obviously.
We
so
got to take our cut.
Why?
That's how the streets
okay,
work.
2%.
Okay, fine.
I think you can get arrested for what just happened.
Shit. All right. End
all
the
right.
pod. End the
So,
pod.
all right, what we need to do is go down to Polaris and Trop.
Bravo, you got your camera?
Everybody keeps taking my business ideas. Fuck.
Guapo's starting a documentary. Melissa's the mole.
Oh man, I could be a good mole.
Yeah, this is gonna get out of line. Lamanna will take care of all the massage parlors on Spring Mountain.
Yeah, Matt, don't worry about it. It's a late night pod. This is what we do.
Yeah, that's true.
It's
It's
like-
true.
It's gonna have a 5 turtle rating.
You just ruined turtles for me forever.
Yeah.
One turtle in his shell.
With one turtle head.
It's extra if you want to pad the shell.
There you go.
Pad the
Jesus
shell.
Christ! Enough.
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean.
All right. So
I don't.
what I was
So RTA.
a long time ago getting around to seeing that video, obviously I thought that the accusation was he was using GTO Wizard in the hand.
Yeah.
And whenever you hear Andrew say, I would used it once, and he said, you've been using it the whole time. He said, okay, so what?
Right.
The clarity that came from this later when Peter came on Spaces to talk to Andrew was that Andrew was looking at one specific spot for
That whole time.
for a lot of time. Seems to be new to the app. Was just curious of a spot where he played a hand, I guess, on an ace queen high board and was trying to find like what the post flop strategy was for it. So he had spent quite a bit of time utilizing GTO Wizard at the table, but it was clarified by Peter that it actually wasn't during the hand, and it certainly wasn't based upon anything that was currently happening or
Yeah.
happening in the future.
Yeah, he clarified it was like a different flop.
Right. Which, had that all been stated out of the gate, I don't think we'd be talking about
Not
this.
at all, right?
No.
Because
Yeah.
then it's like a nothing burger.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I
I
just...
mean, I don't know about not. Well,
No,
it's
it would-
pretty close to
it-
It
nothing.
would be
would
pretty
pre-
much nothing.
Yeah, so I think that that's a good place to start the conversation, because if we can all kind of agree, and we don't have to be in full agreement that
Yeah,
it
it's
like
never
offers
gonna
no
happen.
edge, but if we can all kind of agree that like it's rather innocuous for somebody to look at something that has already happened, I think we can have a more, I guess, interesting conversation as far as like all of the other options that can be removing edge away from the field or garnering an unfair advantage for other people. So I think like first and foremost, I want to state like I think I'm getting painted with this brush where it's like I'm just taking a contrarian point of view and people are like shocked.
Well, okay.
Right. But the fact is I've actually changed my view on this pretty significantly over the last year. We had a podcast where Jared Jaffe took a picture of Brock Wilson, who was looking at a PO solve on his phone. And I was pretty hard on the side of like, this gots to go,
There's
man.
a picture of that every year, and it's someone different. But before that, it was Bunny.
Whoa, she literally had
had
a
a
laptop.
Running
At the fucking table.
Literally
funny
running
one.
a full sim.
Yeah. And yeah, I think like it's jarring to look at, right? So, you know, the early part of the space yesterday was like, a lot of REA, Deeb, these guys who have been around as long as I have, if not longer. Ronnie Barter came in for a minute, and it was kind of just like, I want to preserve what we have and keep live kind of this non-intrusive, non-technological, mano-y-mano, your wits versus my wits type of environment. I think we're long past that.
It's already not that, yeah.
I mean, it's
You can't just
reasonable
look at a guy's face.
want to have that, right? Maybe we're long past it, but that's,
well,
it's like, I understand why people want to try to preserve that.
Yeah, people want to preserve the sanctity of marriage and
okay, let's just couple two
gender roles,
$7,000 houses.
Yeah.
Very different issues
Back in the day.
Yeah, they hope the gender roles remain.
All right,
And
this is apples and oranges, though.
Is it though?
Yeah.
You can't stop technology.
No, I get it.
It's all adapt. It's all an adaptation to society's movement in another direction, right? And I understand we're just talking about a silly game here and we're talking about a gaming environment, but the technology, that Pandora's box is blown open and there's no closing it, right? Like, what?
He's chewing on the router.
Yeah, he's like chewing on the antenna of the router.
I definitely thought you were laughing at box blown open.
Yeah, if the stream goes out, it was Chauncey's fault.
On the router.
I'm kind of disappointed in you, actually.
No, I got distracted.
It's very distracting with Chauncey around.
Yeah.
So I think that, like, to take that stance is willful ignorance to some degree, where it's like, sure, we all want that to happen, and this notion of like, guys, you're gonna scare all the wrecks away. It's like, yeah, it's an easy one to rally behind because that's all we've ever said, but the fact of the matter is, recreationals are going to play, and they've continued to play. Like, we can tell just by the high roller environment, right? Like, it's a third of the field is Rex.
Right, and those guys really will talk in a way that will make you feel stupid.
Right. So when we talk about this specific, are we mainly talking about cash games? Because tournaments, there's already a rule in place that you can't be on your phone while you're in a hand. Like, it's just a rule, and I don't think that rule's going anywhere.
It's not enforced, though. Or it doesn't have a harsh enough penalty or something.
You can just enforce it. You can just say, hey, listen, you give a warning and then you give a penalty or whatever.
Yeah,
that's not the debate. I agree with you.
Right, but what I'm saying is it should be almost a non-issue in tournaments because of that rule.
No, you're completely missing what
in
the
cash,
actual
no
debate
one gives
is.
a shit if you're on your phone, really.
Well, they're gonna start to give a shit.
Yeah.
Now that, like,
the debate,
you can see people are just playing Candy Crush.
Right.
They don't want to look up from their phone to play the hand.
That's
so
the thing.
Both buried in their phones the whole time.
If you are on your phone while playing a hand in cash, you're heavily distracted from what's going on.
Yeah.
So the ability to actually RTA is pretty low.
Yeah.
And if you are trying to RTA, like, your neighbors are going to
obvious,
see. Yeah. The debate at hand is not what you can do in a hand. Nobody's being accused of RTAing. Or at least not in the true sense of.
So the main debate is whether you can use it at all while you're at the table.
Correct.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm on the side of.
Or if I think the debate is should a rule be amended or added, or should something be put in place?
No, there I agree that it's very hard to police, and it probably doesn't give that much of an edge to the person that's doing it because they're looking at something that happened in the past and then.
Well, there are some caveats, right? So first, let's talk about during the hand, because there's obviously a rule in place that says you're not allowed to be on your phone during a live hand in an MTT, but there are some caveats to that. One, during the World Series, you're allowed to play online poker, specifically WSOP.com. Right. So that would allow you to be on your phone. Mm-hmm. Two, there isn't a very harsh penalty in place currently for being on your hand or for being on your phone during the hand. It's basically the tournament director's discretion. And my best guess is it would initially come with some sort of warning, maybe at most a round penalty.
Yeah.
I don't think that it would go to the lengths of DQ unless people are literally saying, like, look, man, he's RTAing during the hand.
Right.
Right.
And at that point, you'd have to be really dumb to do that.
Well, it's not even that. It's just more so you're putting the onus on the players. Well, you're putting the onus on the players to police it, right? It's going to be on me now to take a picture of this guy utilizing the software tool mid-hand and, like, have it demonstrated where he has cards in front of him clearly. He's on his phone clearly, right?
Very
so
difficult, right?
It's a bit of a challenge, but, like, okay, so say that is out there for us to self-police. I'm totally on board with strengthening that rule, and I'm one of the biggest offenders. Like when I'm playing $500 MTTs at the WSOP, if I can be bothered to look up from my phone, it's literally just to grunt and put some chips into the pot.
But you're not looking up GTO charts.
No, no, definitely not. I'm probably playing online, or
You're probably arguing with someone on Twitter.
arguing with someone on Twitter. Very, very
Yeah.
likely.
Very likely.
But anyway, like before we dig any further, I do want to concede, like none of us, regardless of what side of this debate you're on, none of us believe that this is a good thing for live poker.
Right.
It's just more so a question of, is there anything that can be done to freeze time and eliminate this tech advancement in the live realm? Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of the mind that, like, look, we've come to a point where smartphones are smartphones, and unless you're going to start stripping them away from people, which we're not going to, that's just unlikely to happen.
Yeah. It would be like, oh, you can't even have your phone like on the rail, or you can't even have it like, you can't be on your phone at all. Like it has to be in your pocket.
That was a rule for some period of
It would
time.
be
Yeah,
like
it
you have to
was.
step away from the table or
Right.
something.
Right.
That just makes poker miserable.
It does.
It's too boring.
Right. Right.
That
We're
makes
just
poker
we're all just so
absolutely
attached to our
miserable.
phones that like you can't separate the human being from the phone, and it's just going to get worse.
You're also just really trying to over police edge cases. And I think that that's the point that is getting lost that I've been trying to make for the last couple of days is everybody on the counter side is basically saying, like, how could you be against policing this rule heavily? People are obviously gaining a massive edge. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. We're all losing money that choose not to do it. And, you know, the sky is falling and everybody's suddenly become Chicken Little. My stance is like, yes, I agree. There's something to gain by looking things up, whether it was past or even things that are to come. Like if you're under the gun and you want to look up what you're supposed to shove. Sorry, if you're under the gun one and you want to look at what you're supposed to shove under the gun. Of course, if you don't know what your boundaries are, and then you can just look and memorize what the worst hands are that you jam, you've just gained something. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really fucking important to quantify what was gained. And I think that that's where the counter side is struggling a little bit. Like if I was shoving a pip or two too wide or a pip or two too tight, of course there's some money being exchanged there between myself and the general pool. Maybe even specifically just the other 8 players at my table. But how much?
I feel like it shouldn't really matter how much though. Like I just think there should be some sort of rule or something in place. It just seems like otherwise we're just encouraging it.
I just don't understand what's the rule. Like where's the line? What can we do?
Well, before
Close
we
your
get
goddamn solver at the table. Do that at home.
Yeah, I
Heathens.
mean, so that does take us to the next logical end, I guess. Okay, so let's say that we put a hard, fast rule.
I don't want to feel like I'm giving up EV by not solving live at the table, like because I don't find it to be an acceptable thing. But let's say like all the pros just start doing it, and it's just like something that's commonplace because there was no rule against it, and no one really thought it was that bad.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you got everybody looking up every spot before they're in that position.
Well, all right. Let me ask you this. Has there ever been a situation where you had a chip stack that you're very comfortable with, yada, 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 and then lose a pot and get down into a push fold zone, call it 15 big blinds or less?
Yeah.
Yes, that's happened.
Okay.
Yes.
So yes, that's happened. Have you ever responded by then texting friends and saying like, what's the worst hand I jam from this position off this stack?
No, but I have, like, let's say I'll fold something and be like, was that supposed to be a jam afterwards?
Right.
So, but no, I've never because to
Preempted.
me that seems like too much.
Okay. Why?
To me that seems too far. Like that's entering the realm of, you know, I don't know. It just that doesn't seem right to me. To be like,
It's
okay,
borderline
what's my
it's-
range
it's-
here going forward?
Because it's like borderline
Because
the
you're like
one player
getting
to a hand
ghosted
rule,
through
right?
text message.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to have healthy debate,
Yeah.
because I think that there's a clear delineation between you having 2 live cards in front of you and saying, do I jam this hand? versus you just sitting out off the table and saying like, what's the worst hand? I jam next hand.
Yeah, that's true.
To me, that like I wouldn't think to do that, because to me that seems too
Imagine
far.
like being at the final table of the World Series, the main event, right? And it's like this is like the biggest moment where everything means the most, and you have your whole rail and you have your all your friends.
Now
and,
I'm starting to feel like I'm silly for not doing.
Well, no, right, but wouldn't you think that like they always go over and talk to their
100%.
friends, right?
I was
They
just about to
literally
say.
go over and like they're discussing like, well, what should I do here? What should I do there? So that's kind
Every
of like,
hand takes 5 or 6 minutes. You walk over to your
Right.
rail. You say, I have 12 big blinds. I'm
Yeah.
about to be under the gun. What's the
So
worst hand I
that's
jam?
Right.
fine to do.
because everybody's doing it, and it's like,
Well,
Or
I
why
don't
is
know,
it-
because to me, I wouldn't think
Right.
that would be something that would be like kosher.
I personally don't see that as being unethical at all.
yeah.
I think
and
you
what
would-
about like if
That's
everyone if they're
normal.
sitting in the on the rail, your friend, and they literally have the chart open on their phone.
they
They're like-
should.
yeah,
You
they're
would
like,
show
this is
you-
what it is.
You would be
Right.
out of your mind.
So that's
Well, they show you or they tell you it's the same thing.
That's something I should be doing.
Well, I mean, in this extreme example that Brian's giving, you would be out of your mind not to have a team on the rail of the main event final table.
Yeah.
And you'd be out of your mind not to have somebody who's good with ICM
Right.
to coach you through future
Yeah.
spots.
And I'm sure it happens every year.
Because like,
Right.
so let's say, okay, like let's say that there's like a day to prepare for the final table. I would definitely prepare for that and like, like
Of
run
course.
HRC or whatever. But like, for me, it's like, okay, I'm about to be under the gun. What's my jamming rate? Like that just feels kind of icky.
So where does it not feel icky? If you're on break and you're about to come back to under the gun with 12 bigs, is that okay?
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why, right?
But I don't
Yeah,
know.
what's the
I don't
difference?
know.
Yeah.
It's all the same. It's just like optics,
don't
really,
know.
but it
Yeah.
feels like
It-
I think
Right.
it's a
Right.
social pressure thing.
100%.
Because to me, I'm very like, I don't want the table to be mad at me.
Yeah, no. I wholeheartedly agree with
right,
you.
for
Like,
sure.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with you that we're drawing these arbitrary lines in the sand that truly make no difference in the grand
It
scheme
is
of time,
arbitrary, yeah.
right?
Well, because if I was on a break, then I might even like review some pre-flop charts, like
Yeah.
on a break,
Yeah.
on
You
dinner
should.
break or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
So what if there's just 5 minutes between every single hand because that's the way the final table plays out?
right.
Like the other 7 people not involved in the hand
If
are
everyone
probably,
else is doing it, I'm gonna do it at the final table.
yeah, and I think that like
But that's
all
the
of
thing
us,
is, I feel like when it gets to be, oh, everyone else is doing it, so it's okay. Then it's like, oh, everyone else is looking at charts before they play their hand, so
Right.
I'm gonna do it. Like, so it's like, I just feel like that's
I think what you
dangerous.
feel is what's largely being communicated by the side of like we have to police this and we have to have a heavy hand, and I totally understand it. I think what's being misconstrued though is edge gained versus edge lost, right? So I don't actually think the people that are running to the rail and saying like, okay, here's the scenario. What are my next 3 moves if all things stay the same? I don't actually think they're gaining much of an edge.
yeah.
However, I think that they're preventing themselves from being exploited from people who have already either done this work or who are currently on their rails getting the exact same bits of information.
Right.
I think that anything that could be communicated that quickly, Ben CB put a tweet out that basically said, like, imagine I have a spot and I look it up right afterwards. I'm going to get 10x to 100x better in that spot as it continues through the tournament. And it's like, okay, like that hyperbole to me is way, way, way too extreme because you're not getting better. You're just reducing a negative edge that may have been a blind spot prior, right?
That's getting better.
Sort of.
Oh, I think the thing though
it's getting up to
also is
par.
it is kind of like
Yeah.
cram studying, and if you're like looking at a spot, like it's probably not even gonna come up in a way that's applicable going forward. Honestly, like it might, but it's probably like a pretty nuanced.
Yeah, like if you're getting
thing.
exploited in a bunch of spots and now you figure out a way to just to be, at equilibrium, then that's getting a lot better.
Sort of.
true.
It's you. The thing is that with poker, it's relatively uncapped how good you can get, all things considered, like the broad spectrum of you being able to comprehend strategy and then apply it in real time, right? It's pretty capped, however, whenever you're just looking at a very specific vacuum spot and asking like, how can I increase the How can I increase my win rate in this particular situation? And then somebody who can communicate that to you in 60 seconds basically says, you're shoving 1 pip too wide. It's like, okay, you probably just saved like 1/100th of a big blind.
Right. But what if you're shoving 5 pips too wide? Or you're missing like a whole portion of like this range that you should have had.
What if
right?
you just think you get down to 8 bigs and you just shove range?
Sure.
Yeah.
All these are very
You
valid
know?
questions, I think. And I think that at a certain point in time in poker's history, that person would die off.
Yeah.
He would go broke. But there are just measures out there for now where if he chooses to ignore all of the study throughout and then finds himself in a fortuitous situation where there are a couple tables left and he's clearly the weakest player left, well then yeah, like there are ways to get downloadable strategies communicated to you in some way, shape, or form that are going to reduce your negative edge.
Mm-hmm.
But it's way blown out of proportion, in my opinion, as far as how much that negative edge is being reduced. Because you still have no, like if you take somebody who just doesn't know much about poker, right? They're under check raising, they're under 3-betting, they're just under aggressing in like all nodes or whatever. Their push folds are way too tight. They're folding too tight, they're pushing too tight. And you're able to communicate to them in a very nuanced way. Okay, with this stack from this position, when folded to, you jam these hands. Sure, he just got slightly better. He's making fewer mistakes, but
he's still bad.
He's still bad, and the response by everybody else didn't change. They didn't suddenly just lose something, right? Like, sure, they lose his loss rate because he clawed that back. Well, that I guess that's where I'm debating is like, can it actually be a lot? Because risk premiums don't grow that much deep into ICM. It like punts occur, but like Rob gave an example where he like jammed ace queen on a bubble last night, or talking about on the bubble of a 25K. He jammed ace queen in a spot where he wasn't really sure, and it turned out it was making 14K.
Yeah,
and he's like, "Well, if I didn't know that, I would have just like lost 14K." And that's not the way the spot works.
Right.
Like by not jamming there, you didn't suddenly just sacrifice 14,000 in EV. The same as like if you were losing money by jamming there, you aren't just like punting everything off. You still have equity with the hand, and the way ICM works is it's not just going to it's not zero sum in a direct correlated way of you jam, get called, and that person gains everything that you punted and you lose everything you punted, right? Oftentimes, the two people who run into conflict are the ones that are being harmed the most, right? So there are a lot of situations where playing chip EV will allow you to win the tournament more often, even though it's harming your direct bottom line at that exact moment, right? So that's why I think this is
always the case.
Yeah, I think that's why it's tricky to quantify, because it's like, okay, yes, for that decision, now maybe you're making more money than you would have been in the past. But over the grand scheme of things, how much does it actually work out on the aggregate, right? Like we're probably looking at cents on the dollar again. I think the bigger concern is the slippery slope of, okay, well, if we allow this, then what next?
That's like my thing, I think, is why I feel I sort of agree with Ben CB in a way, because I feel like if you don't make a rule or you don't at least make it socially unacceptable, then people are going to take the edges they're allowed to take. And we can't really be mad about that.
That part I really strongly agree with. One of the things I said in the space last night was that if I were in Peter's situation, I would have done something similar. I 100% would have called this kid out. I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, you can't use a lookup database while you're in the fucking event.
Right.
Knowing full well that, yes, he can. He's not breaking any rules. And I'm just trying to socially pressure him into creating a more sterile environment that everybody feels is level.
Yeah.
Right?
So, but it's that then it becomes on the players to like bully the person out of like using their right and to,
Isn't that true though if the rule exists also?
No, because they could get DQ'd.
Right. So you're saying since there's an inherent punishment, we're still policing it.
It's a deterrent.
Right. We're still the ones policing it, but we can actually take it to a higher authority.
Yeah, because what happened there is, oh, hey, stop doing that, you weirdo. And then they're like, well, I'm allowed, so fuck you. And then they're like, well, fuck you. No, you're not. And they're like, actually, I am. So it just becomes this back and forth that's stupid.
It becomes a debate over etiquette rather than over a rule.
And it's like, at the end of the day, they can just say, I'm allowed.
Why don't you
I
have a
can't
mic?
hear
Your mic
him.
is not working.
Man, finally, dreams do
Wait.
come true, guys.
Wait, speak. Give
Hello?
it. There you
Yeah,
go.
you're
You're
back.
back.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay.
Damn.
Just,
All right, what were we talking about?
Temporary bliss.
Yeah.
What were we talking about?
That people like that it can get into this back and forth of like where you.
You stop. The conversation's not about etiquette. He just wins at that point. It's just
Yeah.
about like.
Yeah, that's what I'm
the
saying.
rules.
It's a
allowed.
debate over etiquette as opposed to a debate over rules.
And he's allowed.
Right.
You know.
Right. Okay.
Because I can say, hey, like people have told me burping's bad etiquette. I'm like,
Right.
deal with it. But, you know, it's like, what can you do at that point? You can just
Yeah.
ask them nicely, and if they say no, you say okay.
Yeah, I said this also last night in the space. I would support a rule that was heavily enforced for this, but the issue I come back to then, so it's weird because there are two things at play here, right? If we have a rule that comes with heavy punishment, it does become a deterrent. I think what Rob Young tweeted was very accurate, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you create a penalty that's so fierce, people are going to be afraid to subject themselves to it. The issue that I have then is the other side of this, where that ends up leaving the majority of the field blissfully unaware that the best of the best are still actually getting the information. So people
And they would like that, to have that. They want
the blissful
that. They
ignorance.
say, I don't want to see you using this. Don't remind me that I'm
Right.
losing.
Well, it's not just the Rex though. Like, you know, we're talking about like winning players to some degree,
Yeah.
shit regs, everything
Yeah.
in between. I guess the point that I'm getting at is like the best of the best, the people who have networks, the people who are tapped in and tied in. Like, you know, we run a training site, we have a server, we have an entire team of people. Anytime that I'm on stream, I have 5 or 6 people who can relay information to me. They can give me reads. They can give me breakdowns of hands. They can tell me what just happened in the past, theoretically, if it was good or bad, and exploits that I can look forward to in the future.
Yeah.
I'll always have that at my fingertips, one text away.
Right.
And now that just allows me, in my opinion, a very unfair edge. Whereas if we just don't police what happens in between hands, the edge is now uniform.
Yeah. I guess I can see where you're coming from there. Because it used to be that people would text their friends and their friends didn't know if they were right or not. But now
Right.
they have access
Right.
to all the right answers.
Exactly.
At home.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, you know, talking about the people who are kind of remiss for a simpler time when...
I would just like to say I didn't get to experience that simpler time. I was thrust in, hey, if you're not using a solver, you're gonna lose.
Right. Welcome to the hellscape that's
And
2023.
So I'm just like, okay, this is the game.
But like even those that were from a simpler time, like they had collectives, they had brain trusts. I mean, you know, the best of the best, the world beaters that we look at, like Ike and Kuhn and you know, Ben CB and like that little collective there. They all came up through the game together. They developed solvers before they were public. They had all of this privileged information available to them, and everybody else was just out of the know.
Yeah.
While they were collecting, you know, very, very
no
large
one even
sums.
knew how much they had. Really.
Right.
Mike Postle said cheating accusations aren't cool, not without evidence.
Is it real, Apostle?
Listen, man, I'm not here to differentiate real or fake.
All right.
All I know is Mike Postle wrote this in the chat. All right, I just wanted to share it with you guys.
We should give that man a wrench. I do think that it's critical that. Sorry, I'm going on a slight side tangent, but I do think it's very critical that Peter cleared up. He wasn't accusing him of cheating.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing that I think we have to establish here is what was going on wasn't against any particular rules that we're aware of, and certainly had nothing to do with future games. Like this was pre-bubble, you know, midway through
I think
day
it was
2.
like 30 left, wasn't it?
No.
I thought he said it was like 30 left.
I mean, if it was, then it was a really small field. He said there were like 30 from the money.
Oh, okay. I misheard that then.
Or at least that's the way I interpreted it. Maybe I'm off by the number, but it was definitely pre-bubble.
Okay.
So like the information, again, I know these tools are very powerful, but like lookup databases are hardly super accurate. And
Well, I think the point is they're going to keep getting more and more.
I agree with that.
They've already added the 50% left, near bubble, final 2 tables.
I mean,
final
at some
table.
point, a tool like Ruse is going to be able to calculate all of these things for you in 10 seconds, right?
Yeah.
And it's now just going to be a matter of how fast can you set up a sim and actually run it in real time. But again, we have these lines of communication, right?
Yeah.
So what are we trying to accomplish, right? Who are we hoping to protect the most? And
Me. I'm myself.
okay, yeah, I think that's a very reasonable answer, actually.
That's
I
the only
think-
perspective I have.
Right. I think almost everybody who is crying foul here really is looking themselves in the mirror and saying, like, yo, this edge is getting thinner and thinner every fucking day.
It's like, hey,
Like,
man,
Yeah.
I got to step it up now. I already have Rex at the table talking about blockers.
Right.
The old guy who's
no.
half asleep talking about what he blocks.
But you know
I
that,
don't want to
like,
hear that.
you don't want to
But
hear
they're
it.
just
but,
using.
like,
A lot of
It's
times
not-
they're just
they're not
using
using it right.
buzzwords, right? They're just they hear these buzzwords
Still.
and there's no meaning behind
Still,
it. And it's
though.
like I hear people talk about blockers all the time, and it
I
just
know, they
completely
love to talk
misuse
about
it.
blockers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that as we continue to evolve, it's impossible to compare today's game to yesterday's. There's just going to be too much sweeping change at the hands of tech, and it always trickles down, right? Rex just bet quarter pot now.
Yeah.
They just do,
Yeah,
but they don't know why, and they're never going to know why.
right.
Unless they come to Solve for Why Academy. But I mean, generally, like they're just not really going to have any depth to their strategy. And at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that's where the majority of the win rate comes from.
Yeah. I guess I see what you're saying is that it's not really going to help them with the bulk of the win rate anyway, because that's sort of a more holistic, all around
Right.
type of knowledge of the game.
Right. Now, where I will say it starts to get a little bit confusing for even my stance is when we're talking about major final tables. And the example Brian gave with the WSOP final table is a clear one to me. Like, it now turns into the NFL. And you're just you're a starting quarterback on the sideline having just thrown a pick, and you want to see the defense. And you want to know not to make that mistake again. I don't think there's any way of policing that.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, not without ruining the experience to the point where, like, you're playing in an empty Thunderdome
Yeah. Right.
with
Who
your phone
wants that?
seized.
Right.
And like, look, if that's the decision the community wants to make, then again, like, I'm all for it. I just have this fear that we're overreacting to fear, to doubt, to uncertainty.
So, like, where do you see it going as the technology gets better? Do you think there will come a time when rules need to be added?
I think we're
or-
getting close.
Yeah.
I really think we're getting close. Like, look, we had the same discussion 5 or 6 years ago when Snapshove was first a thing, and everyone was in an uproar. And Snapshove was the most popular app that summer at the World
And
Series.
so many people, people were just using it. And I think it wasn't even like that big of a deal. It
wasn't.
It was just like, this is what you do. You have Snapshove, and then you're in this situation, so you look and so you know what to shove.
Right.
Coming up.
And like the debate of you should never look at, like, I know that you're saying that you've never been in this situation, but like, we're talking 5 or 6 years ago. The app itself, literally, you click fold, and now you have your next range.
Yeah.
So like, that was literally how we used it. It was never.
That's like how range converter is.
Right.
Right. We
Like,
were never looking
Snapshove was-
retroactively.
I know. I think Snapshove was like, it was meant to
Right.
be used
Played
as
along
RTA.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Not RTA. That's
I really
I'm
want to
sorry,
be
it's not
clear.
the right. It's
Yeah,
not RTA.
It's JTA.
It's
Sorry. JTA.
It's not RTA. Right.
Listen,
You have to
just the A. Just the A is not applicable here.
What do you mean, bro?
Just the A is for Saturday nights when you're feeling a little frisky in Vegas.
Listen,
okay?
man, you said it's assistance, right? It's not RTA.
I do
it's
think- yeah.
just the A.
I
I think it's more just that I would be.
JTEA.
I think I just base it off of how weird I would feel doing it at the table.
Right.
And for me, my threshold of what makes me feel weird
So-
is not that
so-
high. I mean, I have a pretty low threshold of what makes me feel
that's
weird.
fair. So then maybe the question is worth asking, like, is that enough? Is this social pressure enough?
No, because I think there's a lot of people that don't even care at all about that.
Right.
So it's really like I'm hurting myself by feeling weird because other people are taking
Right.
these edges that I'm not.
So perhaps then we bucket this in with the phone calls and say you have to be a table length away if you want to look at an app.
yeah.
That seems like the only reasonable compromise here, because I don't think.
Yeah.
So you mean like use your phone at all?
No.
What do you mean?
No,
what do you
no.
mean? Look at a.
To open it and look at it, you can't be in your seat.
Right. If I see
that's
you
weird,
looking
though,
at
'cause
G-
people will stand up and act.
I mean,
I know.
looking at
There's
Well,
gonna be all
no, because
You're
you
saying-
have
you're
to
saying
be
like
at the table to act on your hand.
solver-based
Okay.
app.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if I see that you're looking at GTO Wizard while you're at the table, I need to, call the proper authorities, right? But we have to acknowledge what we're accomplishing by setting we're just making the barrier a little bit tougher.
I'm sorry. I'm curious.
Go ahead.
Is the proper authorities that first guy in the blue shirt?
Yeah, that guy.
No, it's gonna be
I don't even think that guy worked there.
I think he was the janitor.
I think he was just some random guy.
It's always the guy with the tie.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to find a guy with the tie.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're drawing
Thank
dead.
you. Thank you for clarifying that. For me.
It's good.
Charlie is who you're looking for.
Okay.
It's
Always
good.
No,
Charlie.
not Charlie.
Charlie's a bulldog.
Bulldog. Actually, he's getting sweet in his old age now, man. Every year, he's just getting sweeter and sweeter. He's
Yeah.
I seen him let people go last year in Florida.
Wait till he finds out you have range converter on your phone.
I told him, I was like, Charlie, you know, he's just getting soft on him.
maybe I am leaning more in the other way now because I don't really see. Well, I don't know. It's a weird one. I think it's like there's something in me that wants to preemptively stop a ball from rolling down the hill.
Yeah.
But who knows if the ball will actually go there anyway.
Yeah, I listen, I don't think it's that unreasonable to think the technology is moving in a way where this will pose a problem.
Yeah, we're all going to be sitting there solving each spot, and we're just going to
Yeah. I guess for me, and granted, I'm coming from a place of like being well studied and feeling pretty confident in the strategies that I'm executing and understanding like how fucking complicated it is to get to a point of even having like a very cloudy understanding of the actions that you're taking. I just come from the vantage point of like, look, as long as you're not using it in a hand, I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe that's the big takeaway for me is that I don't think the phone while in hand thing is policed
enough
really
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I see people on their phones
I don't play
and
enough
acting
tournaments
all the time.
to really know.
Or even just like having it like open in front of you, like people will put it down, but then it's weird because you are encouraged to play WSOP.com while you play the series. So it's like whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone do what you want, and I don't care anymore. And I'm gonna start solving every spot live at the table.
Most people just put their phones down when they're in the hand. Like they look at their hand. If it's not a hand that they're gonna play, they just put if they're gonna play it, they put their phone down.
Right. It's like, oh, yep,
If
exactly.
not,
I'm on my phone.
They keep their phone in their hand.
click.
They muck their hand. Most people, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's true.
Like,
I also think it puts a lot of pressure on the dealers, and in something like the World Series where it's drastically not understaffed, but you know they have
experience.
Yeah, they have an issue with dealers year in and year out, right? So, I think that we just need to be a little bit more reasonable. Again, like I want to make it very clear, I'm not coming from a stance of like, fuck yes, man, I want everybody using GTO Wizard. This thing's useless. Nobody's actually gaining an edge. Like, look, I understand. There's a lot of, if nothing else, peace of mind to be able to look and say like, all right, man, Jack 10 is my worst hand that I'm jamming here. And then even if later down the line you find out it's a punt for some exploitative reason or whatever, at least you just say like, well, with the information I had at the time, I made the decision that I made. I think that's all people really are searching for. When they're looking up spots that have already passed, they're not trying to get better and more calibrated.
So it's usually a curiosity thing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's wanting a little peace of mind, wanting to know that they either suck at poker or feel pretty good about
yeah,
things.
because sometimes something is super indifferent. You feel like shit about it. So then you look it up and you're like, well, I guess I'm not the worst.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, it was old man Tom. Like, that's justified. But like when it's actually in hand, if it's in hand, like, I can't beat that. Nobody can beat that.
Right.
You know, like if you're truly looking up your shove spots while you're looking down at your actual hand.
You're like looking and then you're like.
That's when I think it becomes a huge advantage.
Agreed.
Right. I'm saying just like way like if you know exactly what to shove, like 20 big blinds in every position, then it's just like.
I think some people are
really, really well.
Still under the impression like that's what happened. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Like even in this chat right now, I've read a couple comments and like I feel like people think that he was looking at things during the hand, which he was not.
Correct.
Because they've only saw the one first tweet by Josh or somebody, whatever.
Yeah.
And like just have no further clarification on it. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like clearly no one was using anything in hand, so it definitely is not qualified as cheating as far as the rules are concerned.
It's just JTA.
Yeah, sure. You're not going to make that a thing, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you
sorry.
You added J.
Yeah.
You're incoherent. But I think that like what really kind of needs to be understood is even if you're able to look a spot up that is future for you, the game is very dynamic. So that spot might change slightly before it even gives you the opportunity to do it. And then secondarily, we're flawed. You just misremember shit.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. There's a mix with King 6 off and King 7 off and King 8 off as pure. Like, God bless. If you can remember that in 90 seconds, like, you deserve the 18 cents of EV that you just earned there. And I'm obviously exaggerating and being a little bit hyperbolic, but I do think it's like really important. You're not playing a symmetric sized event where everybody has your stack depth and the only actions that will be taken are push fold.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have to deal with RFIs. You're going to have to deal with 3-bet non-all-ins. You're going to have to deal with
weird 3-bet sizes.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah.
You know, weird
Limps.
open sizes.
Right.
Limp, over limp, over limp, over limp.
Right. You're going to be in ICM spots like
Yep.
like Dan Smith was the other day. That had to be a super uncommon spot where he's at a final table 7 or 8 handed and it goes under the gun open, cut off calls. And he's on the button with 9s. Like, I don't care what software he had available to him. He would have just never done anything to predict that spot, right? He would have just looked to see what 17 blinds does, either when it folds to him or when, you know, the cutoff opens.
So you're saying it's like it would just be too hard to solve or like to look at anything in a way that would help you meaningfully, or to prepare
in
right
such a
before
way,
the hand.
yeah, to prepare in such a way where you go from being whatever it is that you are to an end boss.
Yeah.
Like you're not getting 10x to 100x better.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big thing. I was talking to Lehman via Twitter, and he was comparing this to the airball thing. And he said, didn't you make a huge stink about him trying to farm for information? I was like, well, I made a huge stink about him spending an hour in the bathroom over the course of a 6-hour session. And he's like, why do you think he was doing that? I was like, you know, probably to ease his anxiety by talking to his friends and coaches based off of a lack of preparation. And he's like, but you know, weren't you guys heavily policing that at the table? And I said, in between hands, we both always had our phone in our hands. We were relaying information to our team. Nobody had any qualms about that. And as far as policing goes, he could have had pre-flop charts on his phone. I don't know. I didn't check, you know? And he's like, well, then why do you think that it's so different that recreationals look at a 6 or 9-handed game and feel like they're being stolen from in this instance?
That reminds me of this Poker Go final table once. I think it might have been in 2021. And it was, I think it was Nick, I want to say it was Nick Petrangelo and Ali, or Msirovic. I want to say, but it might have been whatever. But there was basically, like, in between hands, whoever was opposing Nick was looking at charts, presumably, and he said something. It was either D. Peters and Nick Petrangelo. I don't know, one of their exchangeable kind of, but like
one of the guys who never talks.
Yeah. And he was like, "Oh, are we looking at charts?" Or maybe it was Kuhn. Whatever. They had red hair. And they were like, "Well, are we looking at charts? I just want to know if that's what we're doing, because if it is, then I'm going to do it too."
Yeah.
And the other person just kind of like clammed up and didn't really say much, but every time they're like going back, like between hands, you know. It was like a thing.
And yeah, D-Negs talked about it in the space yesterday. He goes like, listen, like in the high rollers, everyone's doing this after the hand. And maybe he doesn't mean the entire field, but what he's basically saying is like to compete at that elite of a level, it's very important that you are so nuanced that you're getting it right down to the single percentage digit. And like what I was saying to Lehman is the big difference between heads up and any other format is that heads up is the simplest game tree. And I don't mean simple in the way of like, I could just like spend a few minutes and know how to play heads up poker. I just mean it has the fewest decision points. All 3 bets are going to be out of position. All 4 bets are going to be in position. There's no cold calling in between. There's no multi-way or anything like that. It's just a very clean game tree that you can map out. And if you have somebody who is just able to get, you know, some sort of real-time information from the game, they'll be able to help that person tremendously. They'll just be able to plug sizing leaks or frequency leaks, you know, whatever the case may be. So it was a little bit more important for me to, you know, protect the game that we've created. A guy who's not studied in heads up versus me who's also not very studied heads up, and we're going to play really exploitatively. Letting a third person like Ishan come in and just view the whole 100 hours is going to change things dramatically, because he can relay perfect information back to a team who can now parse down the strategy and get it a lot more accurate. But you can't do that 6-handed or 9-handed. Even if you spot him a human emotional support person, it's not going to matter. What's he going to relay? Oh, okay, well, in this 3-way pot, we had this come up, and that's never going to happen again. So what do you guys think?
Yeah.
And obviously, tournaments lend themselves to being much more pre-flop heavy because you get short. So there are some more, let's call it, predictable outcomes. But still, the permutations are just so vast.
Also, it's like GTO Wizard gives you like 20 sizes for each decision. Like they split it between, it'll be like this one 1% of the time, this one 0.04% of the time,
right?
This one 12%. It's like they split it like so crazy that if someone's not used to looking at stuff, like they're just probably gonna fuck their shit up.
Yeah, I think what we can all agree on, no matter what side you're taking of this, is that this only matters most with pre-flop push fold.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, or like 3-bet jams or like, stuff like that.
Something that involves being all in pre.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And again, like outside of the highest ICM points, so call it the bubble in the final table, I just don't really think it matters much at all. I don't think people are gaining much.
Not to be an echo chamber, but you might be convincing me.
Aren't you glad you came on the podcast?
Well, I'm like happy you don't have to pay for an Uber. Like.
The irony is that we were snippy on the way over about this exact conversation.
I was like, because my whole thing was that I was like, I think you're downplaying like the percentage that someone can improve from like starting from nothing, and then because obviously like the bell curve is like that first stuff you learn is huge.
Of course.
So someone could be improving 50%.
Right.
Better than they were by just looking at a chart.
Which I think is true for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I just think that improvement isn't worth as many dollars as we're implying it to be.
Yeah.
They can improve probably just as much by taking a week and memorizing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess like that's the blurry line that I'm struggling with here is, if it was up to me and REA and Deeb and everybody else, I think we would find a way to just like find anybody who's ever created any level of software for this game, hit the throwback machine,
Please did it because I didn't get to experience
like somehow
guys.
get into the Back to the Future machine and like go back and just stop everyone ever. But it's a data driven game. It was always going to be quantified.
Poker, the first hand of poker I ever played in my life was 2009.
Okay, you were right on the cusp.
I was 13 though.
Oh yeah,
I couldn't do shit.
That's tough. Right. Yeah, you're not doing shit.
I was playing Zynga.
Yeah. Well, at least you were playing No Limit. We were playing Follow the Queen.
I was playing Zynga Sit and Goes.
Man, mashing, I'm sure.
Played some No Limit.
I was pretty good.
Yeah.
Back in 98.
I was just really tight.
I was on the leaderboard. Not to brag.
No, I wasn't even on the leaderboard.
I just had a billion chips, not to brag. Paid for most of them.
No, I had bad bankroll management on there because I would get chips and then I would go and play like 1 billion, 2 billion.
Right, nosebleeds.
Yeah, I would play the highest stakes I could.
1 billion, 2 billion.
Yeah. I mean, I guess just to button this up, what do you guys think then the potential action moving forward should be? Because I don't think the conversation ends here.
No, I mean, it's kind of weird. It's like, what are you going to do? What are we going to do about it? Like, there's nothing you can really do about it. I guess, like, you shame people.
Let me rephrase. Do you think it's reasonable to put a hard, fast rule in place where if somebody's caught using any of these lookup devices while at the table, they face a harsh penalty, potentially a DQ?
Castration.
I don't mind it. I don't mind the idea of it. And I think it would deter a lot. And like you say, it wouldn't really deter...
Well, it doesn't deter the texting.
The texting, right?
Yeah, there's just, and if we're going to start talking about policing that, I have a real problem.
No,
I mean,
I'm not going to say we should just police texting.
It creates unfair advantages. It's the reason why GG has their own HUD, and like that's it. Because you can just text a friend. I can text a friend. Other people don't have that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about instead of putting a hard, fast rule in place, if we can agree that there's very little to gain, and maybe we can't agree on this, but if I'm just proposing, if there isn't a whole lot of edge to gain prior to say final table where all the money's at play, what if once you got to the final table, we gave up our phones?
I mean, happens.
I think that's reasonable.
It happens at televised final tables.
It happens anyway. At most
tables,
big final tables, it happens anyway. So like, yeah, I think that's not bad.
Are we okay with just saying like if it's not televised though? We just can't use your phone.
I mean, you have to step away to use it, or I mean, like, all right. So like, if it's not a televised table, right, and let's say it's WSOP, right? I have a rail there. And I can go talk to my rail. Like, so it's the same thing as texting a friend. It doesn't matter. My friends are going to show
though,
up.
I think Melissa's point is very valid. Socially, though, that feels better.
Yeah.
Sure.
It just feels so much better.
Optics might be better.
It does create a secondary market where those people who aren't tapped in can now pay to be tapped in. Right? Like, Deeb talked about this a lot. He's been hired countless times.
I was gonna say, what happens if you play poker but you have no friends?
The irony.
There's nobody on
Then
your
you
rail.
pay for friends.
Right. Yeah, you pay for Sean Deeb to come by.
The irony of
tell you what your push folds
well,
are.
the irony of hiring Deeb is that he doesn't use any of these tools, so he's just giving you his
off
opinion.
the top of his head. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but that's probably worth so
Still
much.
probably
I mean,
worth
especially
it.
the mixed
I'm
games.
sure that's
My
still
God,
really good.
like, 'cause
Oh,
what
the mixed games are
solvers
way
are you gonna
different.
use in the mixed games?
Mixed games, of course.
Yeah, the mixed games are way different. There may be solves out there. I'm sure there are, but
I'd honestly rather get advice from someone like Deeb than try and solve it myself and fuck everything up and mess up my whole process.
If that's the case, then we don't have an issue here, do we?
I guess not. Well, that's just me personally, though, because I know how much like that's worth, like from someone who's
I think
has
so
all
too.
those hands.
I think that's valid.
I mean, you
recognition.
could make the rule like maybe you don't take their phones away at the final table, but if you get caught, you're DQ'd, and that's worth a lot. That's a big deterrent.
I feel like I would be better with that than a sweeping rule.
Right.
Where with 6,000 people left in an event, we have people calling the floor because they're speculating that you might be doing
Yeah.
I mean, that's something
I just
you
think
can't
it
create.
shouldn't be commonplace to be solving at the
Are
live
you gonna try to
table.
solve at the
I just
table?
think it's like
Right.
fucking weird.
It is. It is. And I'm coming from a place where like I was literally in the lead up to the airball challenge, I was playing the ruse trainer while playing cash. They have nothing to do with one another, but it's like I have so much downtime and I have this big thing to cram for.
Yeah.
It felt really silly of me not to. And I know that that's apples and oranges because I'm not actually trying to increase my ROI of the game that I'm currently playing.
Yeah. Well, then I've also heard like counter arguments that are like, well, what if someone's listening to an audiobook about tells like while they're playing, or what if they're listening to a poker book while they're playing?
I mean,
Or listen to meditation while they're playing. It's just getting better. It's just physical and like.
Well, the
personal
difference is what can be quantified. We can quantify, and that's my biggest problem with this debate is that I think people are making lazy arguments. They're making these sweeping statements that so much money is being unfairly taken away, where we can actually just quantify this. We could just figure out on average what the use of these lookup tools is gaining or losing somebody, and then figure out the point where it becomes too much.
Right.
My
final table.
My
seems
thought
like a
is
good place to
probably
start.
final table.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe it's final two tables.
Final
I don't
two
know.
for sure would be important.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
And near bubble.
I was gonna say, what about near bubble now? Like, it's
near
all
bubble, yeah,
inflection
but-
points.
Near bubble is way different.
you're right in the sense that it's a big money spot, but I think
Well, just the optimal play changes so much near the bubble.
I agree, but I think that the general field is still pretty lazy around the bubble, and also these fields are really big. So you're talking about like 30, 40 table bubbles. For me, that
true.
becomes very difficult to police. And even though it's the biggest money jump from zero to whatever you're cashing for, as far as like actual buy-ins go, it's pretty negligible.
Yeah.
Usually you're cashing for like 1.5 buy-ins, 1.35 buy-ins, something along those lines. And for most people, just the sheer money factor there is insignificant. So they don't consider it anyway.
We definitely don't want it to go like
Hey,
so far.
Tortoise folded queens on the bubble.
Yeah.
Well,
I think like when we're
he
talking
was
about
in moneymaker mode, 40 bucks into fucking 15,000.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna let that go to the wayside. No, but like we don't want it to go too far where they make like a ridiculous rule, right? Like very ridiculous rules because they've done that in the past.
Correct.
Remember, I don't know if you knew this, but they used to. There was a rule in place. I think it lasted a couple years. You couldn't say the F word at the.
Wait, really?
You could not say the F word, or you get a penalty at any World Series event.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I'm
Imagine
so
how hard that is.
lucky
Yeah.
I was not
Yeah.
around.
But it was subjective. And like,
What do you
Right.
mean? It was subjective.
like you had to say it, you
Yeah.
had to get told on, other people had to corroborate
Right.
that you had said it.
Well, that's the same process that would happen
Yeah,
here.
Right.
They also have,
Yeah.
remember the all in button.
Yeah.
Or the all you get everyone get like an all in chip, and if you threw it in, you were all in. So like people were like making mistakes
Oh,
and
no.
like
Wait, let's add that back. That could be fun.
right, like they might have got it mixed up with the chips, and I think it was bigger than the other chips, but like somehow it would end up in the middle and be like, no, I wouldn't mean to be all in. And,
Oh,
yeah,
that's really
there
easy
were
to
some weird things.
Yeah, I think from my standpoint,
Wait, when was this F word thing?
Probably about maybe 10 years ago now. I don't know.
And how long did
years
it
go by
last?
so quick, but
When was
Not
it
long.
WSOP
it was
only,
maybe
or
like 1 or 2 years, and then it was.
what
then
caused
it was done.
that?
there's been a bunch of etiquette rules.
It was just we didn't like people were being. It got to the point almost kind of like people wanted to be, I think, loud and obnoxious at the table to get on TV and do these things,
That
and
guy
it
who was
got
dancing.
maybe too far, and people like they were like, we don't want people to be abusive at the
Well,
table.
you would get
so-
patched up by like the online
Yeah.
sites. There was a guy who barked every time he won a pot
Is
for a
that the
year.
guy that would dance too? He would like
No,
stand
that
up
was
and-
Havad Khan. They
Yeah,
actually
that
made
guy.
the Havad Khan
God.
rule.
Right.
Well, so I was so confused because I watched like the Jerry Yang like recap,
Right.
and I saw that, and I was like, why is no one reacting?
Remember
to
the
this?
screaming
Like,
Swede?
what is this
Yeah.
guy doing? Like I
Yeah.
was like, no one was reacting. He's just standing up and like doing gorilla
Yeah, yeah.
movements.
Oh man,
Right.
he was a gem.
And I was like, why is this like I thought I was in the Twilight Zone because
That was-
nobody was reacting.
Well,
to
That
it.
was legitimately
Right.
what 2009 poker
Yeah,
looked
it was like I'm gonna do the most ridiculous thing I can possibly do because when I do, the cameras will come over and then I will get a patch and I'll just make $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 because when the online sites were booming, they were just giving them money away like it was Christmas.
right.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you just do
okay.
ridiculous things to try
So
to
they
get
just wanted you
patched
to
up
get.
and they wanted to get you.
They
Wanted
just
to
didn't want you to do it in a way that involved the F word because that could be something mean.
right, or yeah, it could be like if like they were trying to tamper down on like the abuse at the table and,
Yeah.
and bad, just like yeah.
Then they realized that was.
Then they're like,
the best.
this is crazy.
I think
like,
they've
it's a poker
laxed
table.
it a bit, but there's still like TD discretion.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
you
really?
can't be
You're
just
still
like
not
you
supposed to be
can't.
saying it.
Well, I mean, if you're just like,
the Will Kassouf year,
if you're-
he got like pretty
you're
strong.
still not allowed to
warnings.
be abusive to other players or use abusive language
Right.
towards another player. Like you can't be like you're a fucking asshole. You
Yeah.
can't say that to somebody. But like you can't. But I'm talking to Berkey's at the table. I'm like, you see this fucking baseball game? The fucking Pirates are fucking blowing it. Like and he's like,
Yeah,
oh,
that's
that's
fine.
3 F words, 3 rounds, you're out.
I gotta tell. I felt uncomfortable listening to you just say that too.
Sorry.
It was
No, I'm
very
kidding.
forced. Yeah.
Yeah, it did feel forced. Yeah, they've made
It
many
was
rules. There
forced.
was a Jamie Gold rule where you can't like talk about your hand, even in a
during
heads up
it.
pot. Yeah,
Oh, I hate when they do that because I always like think that's so fun when people.
it
are
is.
Doing that.
I think that they'll come around to loosening
But
that
when I
one up
first
again
started
too.
playing, like I was corrected it because I would be like, "What do you have?" Like you're just not allowed to ask that.
Well,
Right.
now I think when you're heads up, you can talk, but when you're 3 ways, you can't talk about.
Yeah, I'm not
It's,
sure.
it's casino to casino, so like at Bellagio you can't.
Right. Again,
But at the
like
Wynn you can.
a lot of these rules are born out of a lot of FUD that come from people having knee-jerk reactions, right? Like
You're
the
such a
Jamie Gold
crypto-
year.
You're such a crypto bro.
Well,
Fun.
I mean, it just applies like fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yeah.
You prey upon it, right?
Yeah.
So when you want to leverage something beneficial for you, those are the first 3 things that you adhere to. And I think when Jamie Gold won the main event, the table talk was all that was being heightened.
Yeah.
And it was like he almost manipulated himself into a win.
Right.
And people felt like exposed and taken advantage of. So there was a big outcry of how unfair this was. And it's like, well, you fell for it.
Yeah.
You don't
You didn't have to say anything.
yeah, you don't have to listen to what he's saying and like believe him or not believe. Like basically, they didn't want the distraction anymore, and it's like that's kind of a backbone of poker.
Yeah, that's part of live poker. I
Yeah.
thought.
I think so too. Yeah, and in cash games, obviously, it still flies. So I think at some point they'll get a lot more lax on that.
Wait,
Same-
so you can't do that in tournaments still?
I don't think, and maybe it's just a Caesar's rule
I've
still.
done it before.
I mean, also, it's up to the dealer or
Yeah.
somebody to call
You
you out
could
on.
never reveal what you actually had. That's always been.
Yeah.
It's always been a rule. You can't like say like I have Ace King of Spades and you actually have Ace King of Spades.
It's so funny because
well, I
cash
think, like-
games, like you can just do whatever you
But
want.
Yeah.
you can speculate what the other person has,
Right.
right?
Right.
I think you could also say like, well, what if I have Ace King?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Like, I think there are ways to imply that you could,
Right.
whatever. Anyway, as it stands, I think that the rule is that you can't talk about your hand or your opponent's hand, even
Okay.
in a heads-up pot. And you're also not allowed to do anything while you're in a live hand. That is currently a rule. So I
What do you
think
mean
like,
you're not allowed to do anything?
well, like you're not allowed to consult anything, be it a chart
Right,
or
okay,
your
yeah.
phone or whatever.
Yeah.
So I
Person
think
on the
like putting this whole thing to bed and buttoning it up a bit. I think that from my personal perspective, if we're going to take action moving forward, which I think is very reasonable, I think the ideal version of this is no phones at the final table. I don't think they necessarily have to be sequestered, but I think that like you just can't actively use your phone, right? If you're on the table with your phone in or out of hand, I think that should be policed. Outside of that, YOLO, fuck it, we ball. You know.
I just looked up the chart for the podcast, and it says it's time to go to bed.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
Oh, you guys are like
we're like
twins.
the whole hour. Man,
are we just brothers?
Yeah,
we're
hour
tired.
and 15 minutes. Listen, I got a Vanderpump Rules reunion to go home.
Do you know what time we got here today?
Yeah,
I do.
You know what time?
No, you
Do you
don't,
know what time
because
I got here?
You got here very late.
He got here early, and I was already here.
That's true.
Conrad wakes up really early. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. We're going to be back again tomorrow at 6 p.m. We'll be here in this, at 8 p.m.
Yep.
We'll be in this time slot for the rest of the week because of the Academy. Want to thank Melissa for coming on.
Thank
and
you,
missing her
Poodle.
Uber.
Missing it.
Well,
You are the Uber.
You're right.
right,
should
making
charge-
me the Uber, I
charge
should
$10.
Car's
say.
gonna be done soon.
Be sure to let us know your thoughts on this situation as far as charts go, as far as lookup databases, and as far as technology moving forward. Like, what should we be doing to police this further? Really interested to hear from the audience. Thank you guys so much.
Before we get out of here, today's
What?
a big day.
What's so big?
It's a big day today.
Why?
My boy Guapito got paid.
Oh,
you
that's
didn't
right.
see it?
no.
Oh,
Brian ordered Chipotle.
yeah. So he threw a bunch of
I got all the
tortillas.
leftover tortillas.
All right.
Don't spend them all in one place.
And on that note, we out.
Peace.